So, the first film we're going to review is Kelly Reichardt's latest film, First Cow. And Steph, tell us about this film.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, this film is pretty much set in the Oregon Territory, so next to a self-made civilization called Fort Ticklum. So you have this kind of contrast between this new kind of older civilization from the 1800s, and it follows a gentle young man called Cookie, played by John Magro, who a lot of people will probably recognize from Orange Is the New Black as Lorna's partner Vince Muccio, who finds Chinese immigrant King Lu, played by Orion Lee, on the run. He's on the run, naked, shivering, and cautious, so it already kind of looks a little bit like a Western tale, but flips immediately. So, unlike many of the others that King Lu seems to have encountered on the trail, Cookie is very hospitable and offers shelter and food. And a friendship between the two men lends itself to a biscuit baking business in search for capital and prosperity. But the reliance on stolen milk from the lone cow belonging to the chief factor presents as many opportunities as it does inevitable tragedy. So I've been waiting for this film to come out for quite become available for quite a while, and I wasn't disappointed. I really enjoyed it. I'm wondering everyone else's thoughts on this, because it's one of those films that I thought was going to go a lot differently than it did.
Yeah, I thought the same. I have also been waiting for this, Steph, because I think it did the festival circuit in America ages ago, it seems like, and it came out in America a long time ago. It's been waiting for UK distribution. And I don't know what I was expecting, but it was fantastically slow and meditative, and really drew me in. Really drew me into the eventual narrative about the kind of start of capitalism developing against the sort of backdrop of this natural world, and the way things could have gone differently at this sort of pivotal moment in history.
Yeah, I loved this film. I thought it was really great. Now, I rather like Kelly Reichardt's style as a filmmaker. The first film of hers I saw was Night Moves, which is a very... If you want to be uncharitable about the film, or if you didn't like it, it's a film you would undoubtedly end up describing as slow. And I think that is probably something that you could level at First Cow as well. But what that doesn't get across is the fact that it's not so much slow as it's just a gentle pace. It's not a style of storytelling which I think looks to cram a lot in and artificially up the stakes. And this film, just from the way that the relationship between King Lu and Cookie develops, and then this very specific type of peril they put themselves in by, stealing the milk of this prize cow. It blends very well with Kelly Reichardt's style of filmmaking. There's so many scenes where it's the entire kind of premise and setting is just left to breathe a little, and I enjoyed it enormously. It reminded me of Night Moves, which is a film which I don't recall it being amazingly thought of at the time. I certainly don't think it was negative, but it reminded me of that very strongly, and I just really enjoyed that mode of storytelling and the little things that it weaves in about kind of the politics of the situation and the relationship between the characters in terms of their kind of economic and class status and things like that. It's also a really smart film, but it does it in a way where it's all told very organically. There's no soapbox on which it's making a point. It tells to my mind, it just tells a very good story, and it manages to weave in some other stuff alongside that, which I also find very interesting. So I was a big fan of this. I think it's been a long time coming in terms of a UK release, but I think it was well worth the wait myself.
I too was looking forward to the film, just from all the buzz that came out about it. And I guess I'm just the least... I enjoyed it the least of the three of you. I don't know. I think it's in part just because I tend to dislike the genre of the Western two people in the woods sort of thing. I'm thinking of like the Good Brothers, or what was that? The film that what was it? The Sisters Brothers.
Sisters Brothers. Yeah.
And then the film that you made me watch, Jim, Nightingale, or something like that.
That's just what that film is known as forevermore, isn't it?
Yeah, the Jennifer Kent film.
I've just been inundated on this podcast with a lot, but no, I mean, it's a great film. It's beautiful. It's it is really slow. It's just probably not my type of film, so I did find it sometimes I did find it not something I was like blown away by. And yeah, I mean, I certainly got the interesting connections of America before capitalism before it takes off and everything like that, but just wasn't something that it didn't blow me away as much as I had hoped it would. I mean, I was really particularly taken by the 4:3 aspect ratio and sort of how all the shots were kind of closed in, and so it definitely made it feel more personable and personal, and I definitely thought the acting was quite good. But I'm not I didn't love it like you did, Jim, or you did, Steph.
I can kind of see that though. Like, I'd be interested to know what other people think about this. But it's more like Julie Reichart as a filmmaker. I don't think our films benefit well from kind of massive build up and a lot of anticipation, because they're not the sort of like to my mind, they're not the sort of films that kind of like explode onto the screen and maybe grab you immediately. They are the sort of things that you need to kind of sink into, I think, and find its rhythm, or at least that's what I've found. So I do wonder if it's just a case, maybe with people like me saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's really good, I loved it," and it's just been kicking around for so long, and I was like, "Oh Christ, this first cow." I mean, I need it's maybe a case of it's maybe the sort of film that doesn't particularly, I mean, I don't think any film benefits from overhyped expectations, but I do wonder if Julie Reichardt's films are maybe particularly susceptible to suffering from that, maybe.
I also think it certainly has to do with my attention and what I can deal with streaming films now. And I think of some films like Happy as Lazzaro I loved, but I saw it in the cinema and I sort of appreciated its beauty, and I like seeing it on a screen that's quite dark. The film is quite First Cow is quite dark in certain places. I think it might have helped. This might have been the film I should have gone to the cinema to see because it would have forced me to kind of get into the pacing a little bit better, possibly. Yeah,
I think like Sound and Metal, the sound and the quiet of the film is so important to it, and I think that would really benefit from being seen in a cinema.
Absolutely.
When it comes to sort of things that fall in the spectrum of the Western genre, that's not a type of film that has ever really landed with me. I'll never, refuse to watch something by its genre, but it's never been consistently one that really gets me quite absorbed. I think the reason that I think that, unlike other predecessors of that genre, I think that it's not the Western that you think it is. When you go look at the cinematography and you look at it, everything's very much incorporated within the land and in the setting. So, and even the melting pot of all the characters and the way that they're dressed, it does transport you into kind of the 1800s very easily. So I think automatically you were expecting a much different film than First Cow is, especially the way that it paces and sets itself up to be. You kind of already have that illusion that you're not going to get what you're expecting. Much of the things that happen almost seem to me to be kind of a reversal of how things work in kind of Western style filmmaking. There's no real gunfights and shootouts, and there's not really any massive focal point of conflict, which I think is very unusual. Instead of even though you have the seeds of capitalism between the soils, and you do have little specks of tension that build up to something as it goes on. But the more you watch it, it's sort of something that it focuses more on kind of companionship and friendship than it does with conflict. And I think that was really nice to see, especially if you kind of, when it begins, you find that these skeletons being dug up from the soil, and then that transports you very gently into the story. of where they came from, and the civilization that existed before, and how certain things are very much different now, but how things have kind of carried on very consistently, and how I quite like that kind of linear aspect of it, where it was less and kind of it was less focused on the conflict with the cow and everything, and it was more focused on this friendship between these two men. And I think that was I just like never seen anything like it. I think if I had seen like Jim a lot of Kelly Reichardt's filmography, I would have been more kind of expecting what First Cow was. But I think if you go in it without knowing anything that she's done before, you will be very pleasantly surprised at how different this kind of sort of filmmaking is, because it is a very simple story. And I think that, especially now, we like to overcomplicate films to degrees that they don't even work anymore. And this is a very nice tribute to simple filmmaking that I think works very well. But I do think that it's one of those films that will land with you or it just won't. And it's just mostly to do with the pacing, and the kind of tone of the film is not something that you might have signed up for.
Yeah, I think the tone in particular is where I expected something different, because I think I expected more of a like Coen Brothers kind of tone,
Yeah.
More of a funny kind of thing, and it didn't draw me into the narrative straight away. It sort of snuck up on me, and it started out just absolutely gorgeous. It's gorgeous throughout. It's wonderfully shot. It's absolutely beautiful. It's 4-3, like you say, Amanda. An obvious tribute to Zack Snyder's Justice League. But it's she really uses that frame to emphasize the composition of the shots, and sometimes she narrows the frame even further. The shots like between tent flaps and shots through windows that narrow the frame even further just really highlight the composition. But all this beauty sort of drew me into it, and eventually I did find myself fully engaged with the narrative and really invested in it. It is slower, it's more meditative, but sometimes cinema is just watching two men stealing milk from Toby Jones to make scones, and that's lovely.
We can't forget the Scottish character in there, Ewan Bremner, as well. That was quite amusing to me.
Well, actually, I need to thank First Cow for saving my perception of Ewan Bremner's performances in films at Glasgow Film Festival, because I think we're far enough removed from Glasgow Film Festival now that I thought Creation Stories were awful. So we at least got and Ewan Bremner's a performer I really like, so I was pleased that there was at least a film that he's really good in. The only other thing that I kind of want to say about First Cow is just to pick up on Steph's point about not overcomplicating narratives and simple storytelling, and I think that's what I really enjoyed about this film. I think anybody who's like read a bit of what I've written about films or has listened to this show before knows that sometimes the films that I get on the most with are when somebody just tells a story well, and it's just for such a simple statement. It's such a hard thing to do, and there's a lot of and there's a lot of films that do that, and because they don't do it in a particularly I'm not even going to say showy manner, because there's stuff that Reichart does in here which if you're looking for it is quite showy, but it's not a particularly ostentatious way of doing it, I think is the way I would put it. Like Miss Juneteenth, of the films that we've reviewed in the show, that's one that I would think of where that was juggling a lot of balls and it just told the story very well. I'd put this in the same category, and it allows, to me, the points where the script wants to have literal flourishes or little quotable moments even. I think it works really well, and it's like there's one part where they can't possibly understand how they're managing to get away with this, and it's the line, some people can't imagine being stolen from, talking about Toby Jones's very kind of like up himself, well-to-do, rich colonial sort. And I just thought that was a beautiful line. I think it summed up kind of that situation like really quite beautifully in some of the themes of the film. So it's more that deliberate sparsity in the story really, to me, allows these bits to come shining through, and it's not trying to say too much, but what it does say, it says extremely well, and it says it extremely effectively, and I think that all comes from that that storytelling approach where it is. I don't want to say only what is necessary, but it's more. It's a very uncluttered narrative for me, and I think that's the strength of her films that I've seen before, and I think it's what comes through very clear to me on this one.
Yeah, there's an attentiveness to the film. Like there's lots of shots of bird watching and mushroom picking and the kind of quiet attention to nature. Mm-hmm. But I think that reflects the filmmaking, because I think the filmmaking, like you say, is very attentive. It's very focused.
Even though this was, meant to be in the 18th century, it was like all the characters were so authentic. I think, John Margot's character, even though with the dress and everything, and obviously with the situations being completely different from modern day, I could imagine bumping into him in the street, because it was just something that transcended almost eras, just the gentleness and the kind of humanity that still kind of exists within people. It's such a gem to see. Almost people that are living in the society that are written quite timelessly. And if anyone unfortunately follows me on social media, I never shut up about Ewan Bremner. I absolutely love him. So I was just so happy to see him being utilised well in a film. I feel like he's one of these actors that never quite gets enough really good independent writing to showcase the talent he's got, because he has all these bit parts and stuff, but it's nice to see him, and I think he really thrives well in a lot of independent productions. So it's nice to see kind of people being resurrected in film. I think he's one of those actors that seems to have been lost a little bit back in the 90s, and people forget that he is still very much working, and he's still got a lot of potential.
He's terrific, actually. I think actually one of his best performances is a little bit overlooked. I mean, like, anybody knows me knows I'll bang on about this at any opportunity. But actually, the Trainspotting sequel, I think he's fantastic in that. I think he's the best thing in that film. But yeah, no, you're right. He seems to end up with supporting roles a lot, so I think people can sometimes forget about him.
And have you seen Creation Story, Steph?
I haven't. No, I haven't seen that one. That's been on my list for a bit, but my list is now reaching down meters, but I will eventually get there. I will eventually get there. It's been one I've been wanting to check out for a while. So
well, anyway, despite my aversion for two peeve friends in the woods, I think everybody else highly recommends this film. I'm gonna check it out in the cinemas. I've decided to get the full experience and go check it out in the cinema or online. I believe it's at the 28th?
28th, yep.
28th of May.
And it'll be on, it'll be on Mubi as well if you haven't got a cinema showing it near you.